And I realized it wasn't that, it was the validation,
Mhm.
having somebody just automatically, reflexively side with me and believe me
And
and
want to protect you.
want
Yeah.
to protect me and know that the other person was wrong.
I'm Angela Williams,
Hi, and I'm Katie Sudano,
and I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
and I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Welcome
Welcome to Voice Up for the Voiceless.
If you're just tuning in for the first time, we welcome you to our show. We are providing a platform for a conversation around the deep and dark and taboo and often stigmatized subject of child sexual abuse, child exploitation, child trafficking, and we even dive into child ritual abuse.
Mhm.
So we ask that you would share this podcast, that you would listen to the end, and that you would help us break the silence.
Yeah, feel free to subscribe and hit the little bell if you're watching us on YouTube. And if not, just make sure and share it if you know anyone who's been a survivor or victim. I know a lot of people use that word. We like to use survivor.
Survivor to thriver.
Yep, exactly. Then just make sure and share it. We offer a lot of tips and prevention tools and healing tools as well. And a lot of experts have been on our show to just guide us and give us some extra things to do to help. Even us, we've used the tools.
Yes. And if you want to be a guest on our show, go to voiceupforthevoiceless.com and you can scroll to the contact us page and fill out information there. So if you are a survivor and you want to tell your story, or if you're working in the field as an expert in law enforcement and child advocacy in any form, we would love to have you on your show and share your message and your organization.
Absolutely. But today, or I should say, and we have a special guest. And I thought I remembered where she was from, but we'll ask her when she pops in. But her name is Sue Stevens, and she's an author of 2 novels. And we're so excited to have her come on and tell us about. Actually, we were going to name the show one thing, but I'm going to keep the title until the end.
We're going to talk today, though, about those survivors that maybe their story isn't as what we would consider dramatic, in that they maybe were touched inappropriately as a child, or their abuse lasted maybe for days instead of like our situations for years. But we really want to talk about the trauma is still severe. The trauma is still real, and the trauma still has to be healed from. So I think there's no level of abuse. I say abuse comes in all flavors, and abuse is abuse. So I'm excited.
And it's on a continuum. We talk a lot about
the continuum. So I'm excited to dive into the subject. And without further ado, we'll welcome our guest, Sue. Hi, Sue. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sue.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, look,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's unpack your story.
Well, first, before we do that, could you tell me where you're coming in from again?
Yes, I'm in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Okay, well, welcome. How's the weather? Is it?
It's raining, but it's not snowing, so that's good.
Oh, okay. So we're in November. We'll probably air this sometime December or January, so it'll probably still be cold.
For sure. Did you want me to start with a little bit of that reading, or is that not appropriate?
Well, you can go ahead with your prologue. Absolutely. I think that would be a great
way to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start by just reading the prologue to one of my novels, which is semi-autobiographical. It's easier for me to get into it through this, but then I will talk more personally.
Yeah.
So it starts with a flashback. My room is cold. I pull my yellow blankie up under my chin. I wish Tramp was here. Maybe I will fall asleep in time. Footsteps come. They stop at the top of the stairs, by the big window I like because icicles fill it in the winter. The footsteps start. They're here. I shut my eyes and freeze. My door opens. He sighs, sits on my bed like last time. Don't look, he's not real. Don't touch my cheek. He's touching my cheek or my neck. Don't move. He's not here. He's not real. Go away. I can't talk. My mouth is gone. I'm gone. I'm not here. His hairy hand crawls down some other girl's front, making circles. He leans on her, big and heavy, and kisses her on the lips. The other girl is under his horrible fat body, smelling his hard, sour breath, feeling his wet, mushy lips. Don't move, I tell her. If you don't move, he'll go. Where is everybody? He gets up. I peek. He pulls at his saggy sweatpants, touches his short brown hair with those hands. Don't. Breathe. I'm in the bathroom, on the potty. Nothing comes out. I climb on the step stool and turn on the water. Water isn't enough. I put the bar of soap in my mouth like Mommy did when Julie and I touched our tongues together. I look at my bed. Tramp, please come. I was 22 when I let the memories in. They'd been fluttering around the edges of my brain like a bunch of random words straining to form a sentence. I kept finding myself awake at midnight with my face tense and contorted, my eyes scrunched, and my mouth drawn up unnaturally. Frustrated, I decided to pay attention the next time the flutters tapped gently against the inside of my skull. Once I gave them permission, they took shape, and that was that. I went on with my life. It's not like what happened changed me or anything.
Wow.
Wow, what an amazing writer you are.
Thank you. Actually, I thought that would be easier. I'm not sure if it was. It almost takes me back more because it's a semi-autobiographical story, and that part is that's all me.
Mhm.
So
You can
that's
tell.
Yeah,
You
I was
can
just
you
gonna
can
say.
tell in how you read it, but the
Mhm.
way that the description and the dialogue there was just it steers something inside of you.
It's
I think for
powerful.
every survivor that listened to that moment in time that you want it to
Mhm.
stop, you want time to stand still, you want to be another person, you want an out of body experience, and many of us have had the out of body experience to
Mhm.
kind of detach from what's happening.
Mhm.
So now dive in and tell us who that person was and what happened.
Well, so this was a family member. I'm not going to get too specific to protect, not to protect the guilty, but to protect the innocent, still connected with the guilty. But it was a family member, obviously a man, and I was about 6. I had a hard time remembering, but I checked with my sister, who was 2 years older and also was a victim of this. And so I was 6 years old. It apparently only went on for a few months. I have numerous memories of him touching me in different places within my house. So I know it definitely was more than one time, and it was it was what I described. It was touching and it was kissing and it was horrible. And I would freeze. I just like in what I read, I froze up thinking that would make it stop or go away. And interestingly, it really did. Um, this is so gross to even say, but later on, years later, he would say, "I knew she didn't like it because she froze up."
Mm.
Mm.
Yes, creepy. And so in a way that protected me.
And
But
who did he say that to?
he said that to me and to other family members. There was, some discussion on it many, many years later. Yeah.
And never any justice? He was never brought to justice?
Um, no, within the family and even beyond the family circle, it's sort of common knowledge, but no, there was never any holding them accountable.
I'm
Um,
just curious, how are children in your family protected today?
by keeping children away from that person? And that's a great question. Any of us who have since had children of our own, everyone knows, my brothers know, there's been no contact between children, especially young children, and him.
We just had a show discussing this exact thing because we're going to be airing a Christmas show about if when the perpetrator is still around, in the family, and we're supposed to be all happy and the holidays and all that, and
Mhm.
it's just baffling to me that we can still have holiday dinners around a table with a perpetrator that has admitted fault, and the survivors are expected to sit there and take it. You put a mask, put a smile.
Mhm.
Has that been your experience as well?
No, because I was able to cut off contact decades ago.
Oh, good, good.
And again, as did many of my siblings, we just said, sorry, there's going to be no contact with you. We're not going to visit where you live. We're not going to see you at holidays, and we've lived up to that, and that's been fine. And for us, it certainly has helped.
That's
But
a
I
big,
also,
strong family to do that, though. I want to applaud you for that.
Yeah.
well, it's mixed. I can't say it's across the board that everybody's supportive, and that was a real wake up call. That was harsh when it was happening, when it was first coming out, to not have everybody be supportive. But I know so many people go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can also tell you, I don't want to tell my sister's story. It's not mine to tell, but I will just say that worse things happened with her. She was 2 years older. More happened. Unlike me, she didn't block it out for years. She grew up with it. And yet she has contact with him. She didn't for many, many years, but she decided that was a way for her to help heal by proving to herself that he couldn't hurt her anymore. And I found that mind boggling, but she and I said, long time ago, we would never judge the other for however we decided to deal with it. You have to let everybody do their own thing, right?
And that's a good point you make, Sue. And I want our listeners, especially our survivors, to hear that. There's no right or wrong way to heal.
Mhm.
You have to heal in your own time. You have to heal in your own way. And you have to respect the safety of yourself and your feelings. And I know that I've, like Katie, have had to face our abusers after the abuse and after the disclosure. And, it was very difficult for us, but I wish I had gotten that strength to actually have a moment of confrontation. That's
We
kind of
talked about that for the Christmas show
yeah,
too.
one of my
Uh,
regrets, but,
uh,
you know, for whatever reason, that wasn't God's plan. So I live with that. But every time I was around my perpetrator, I was in extreme fear, and almost even as an adult would just really freeze and be that little girl again.
mhm.
So how is this, you said the memories came back in your 20s. So take us from that point of what happened during that time of really remembering and having those flashbacks.
Sure. So as I said, I really did just blocked it out for decades, and um, it's funny, just like that passage I read, the memories started sort of tickling at my brain. It was like they wanted out. Maybe my brain knew I was old enough to maybe grasp it and deal with it. But I would be home in my family where I grew up for a visit from college or whatever. And I just remember, I can distinctly remember the first time it happened. I was lying in my childhood bed, like this little flash of memory went through my head, and I was like, I shut it off. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't want to go there. And but it happened again and again. I don't think it was all on that same visit. I think this was over several different visits. And so finally, I was at a point where I said, okay, I'm not gonna fight it. And so when I get that little flash of memory, I'm gonna try to hang on to it and see what it's all about. And that's what I did. And it came back. And typical of many victims, I said, okay, now I've remembered it. So that happened. And life goes on. What do I do? It was a long time ago. Meanwhile, this man has stolen the family. He stole a family member. But it never occurred to me to do anything sort of more proactive. So
I feel like you're so sorry for interrupting. I feel like you're so blessed because when those memories come back, I know for me, a lot of times I doubt them and I wonder if it's just a dream or somebody told me something or a story, someone else's story that it couldn't possibly have been my memory. But I didn't have what I feel like you had was someone to kind of go to and say, hey, could this have been real? Did this actually happen? And it sounds like you did. So you had some confirmation.
yeah, that's a really good point. I don't remember feeling doubtful about it. It seemed pretty real to me, but at the same
Hmm.
time, maybe that's partly why I didn't say anything. Maybe I wasn't 100% sure. Um,
Hmm.
but what did happen was a year or two after that. I remember it was a summer during college, but I was staying somewhere else, not in my childhood home. And my mother called me on the phone, and she was very upset. And she said, "Your sister says that she was abused. I don't know what to do. I don't know if it's true." And I just said, "Mom, it's true, and it happened to me too." And
Oh,
Mm.
that began years of family strife and arguments and fights and tears and trying to deal with it. And, gradually all the siblings learned. Um, honestly, like I said, most of the family was supportive, but I did have one sibling, and my mother had a very tough time with it, as the partners often do, right?
Yeah, because I feel like if they absolutely didn't know, it's just so shocking, and it almost is a reflection of the mom of how good, I'm doing air quotes for those listening, how good of a mom they could have been and not seen or been able to protect you.
And it's just
So
easier to bury it. It's just easier to sweep it under the rug. So families, for as long as time can tell, have done that. And that leaves the survivor so alone and so isolated in their
well,
pain.
and feeling kind of unloved in a way
Mhm.
because you want to feel protected, you want that support, especially from a mom. So I know how difficult that is for both sides, because I'm on both ends of the spectrum. I am a mom of an abused child, and I was abused myself. So I can understand both point of views. But so how is your relationship with your mom now with it all?
It's good now, but it took a long time. I mean, I basically cut her out of my life for 10 years. Um,
Oh, wow.
For 10
I
years.
Wow.
Wow. That's a long time.
It is a long time, and I just had to. We tried, like I said, after it came out, there was probably a couple of years of, again, trying to make sense of it and trying to figure out the relationship.
So
And
you're a
Wait, did
cancer
you say,
survivor. You're a cancer survivor, breast cancer,
ovarian.
ovarian.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard chemo,
Yes.
and then I'm like, wait.
Because I had read briefly your bio where you had
Mhm.
written your first book when you had some type of injury,
Hmm.
correct?
Yes, I had a broken pelvis.
A broken
Oh,
pelvis. Oh my goodness. And then you had ovarian cancer.
Yes, and those were much later on.
What a survivor you are.
Well,
And you use
we
that
all
time
are.
productively.
Yeah.
yeah,
When faced with it, we all are, right? So
Right.
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm sorry. Wait, so you had all this physical manifestation of your trauma with the injury and then chemo, and then how did you get back in talking with your mom?
Right. Well, so first of all, those things happened much later in my life, but I did have physical repercussions. So in the middle of all this, the family angst, I was building a career in public relations and doing quite well and loving my job. But my body started to break down. Lots of little things. Like first, I got a migraine, which I had never in my life had a migraine. There were no migraine sufferers in my family, and I was about 24, 25, and I had a horrible migraine. And then that became a regular thing for the rest of my life. Um, and so once I got the migraine kicked, which took like 3 weeks, it was crazy. I took 3 weeks off from work, which was unheard of. Um, and then I got a stomach virus, and then that
Mm.
cleared up. And then I got a kidney infection.
Mm.
And so my boss, who was wonderful, very intuitive and empathetic, she finally sat me down and she said, "Do you think there's something going on, maybe that's causing all of these physical symptoms?" And so I told her, and she was the first non-family member I had ever told, and she's the one that suggested therapy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
So
amazing how our bodies, when we hold this trauma inside and we don't deal with it or heal it or do something proactively, it does manifest in a
mhm,
lot of physical ailments. We both have spoken about that on here. Yeah.
mhm. Right. And getting to that point, before I had really dealt with it, there was a lot of self-destructive behavior, like so many people go through. There was the heavy drinking and some drugs and casual relationships, and I had weight issues, all of which, I finally realized through therapy were obviously coping mechanisms. And even the weight, and my own my own Freudian interpretation is that I was having these relationships, but I would always choose people that my girlfriends would always say, "The person's not good enough for you. What are you doing? You deserve better." But I realized I didn't want to be attractive, and I didn't want to be in a relationship that had a future, because what happens next? You get married, you have kids, they get abused. It's dangerous territory.
Mhm.
So, so in the, all those years too, all of that self-destructive behavior was going on.
It's interesting you talk about the weight. I I released a book last year called Loving Me After Abuse, and really truly looking in the mirror and loving myself the way that God loves me and the way that I should love myself.
Mhm.
And the weight I had to put on probably about 50 pounds when I was 17, 18 years old to stop the wolf whistles and stop being attractive. And that was the only thing I could control. And so I gained that weight, and so that was what, 40 years ago. I'm almost 60 years old, and I just shed the pounds. I just let go of 70 pounds, which is like a whole person.
Are you seeking hope and healing after the heartbreak of abuse? The book, Loving Me After Abuse, from author Angela Williams, available on Amazon, is like a comforting conversation with a friend who truly understands. The author shares her powerful journey of surviving 14 years of childhood sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. With courage and faith, she overcame shame and dysfunction to find healing and freedom. Through her story, Angela Williams offers guidance, inspiration, and the incredible message of Jesus Christ's power to heal and restore. Don't walk the path of healing alone. Let Loving Me After Abuse be the guide you've been searching for. Available on Amazon and Kindle, paperback, and Kindle Unlimited. Healing is possible, and your journey starts today. Loving Me After Abuse, from author Angela Williams, on Amazon.
Wow.
And by the way, she was beautiful even before. So
I see my interviews, and all I see is these big puffy fat cheeks.
No.
It's like a chipmunk. But
It was a protection, right? And it was
it was a layer, I think, of insulation around my body that and I met my husband when I was heavy, when I had gained the weight, and he loved me anyway. And has always loved me at whatever size I am. I say I have anywhere from a size 8 to a size 16 in my closet. So, but thank goodness I have gotten rid of everything above size 10 right now. So I have no choice. I can't go back. But
well, congratulations.
It's like a way a lot of, and food is comforting, right?
Mhm.
I find great comfort in food, and that helped me through some of my darkest times.
I was the opposite.
Yeah, she can't eat. She's
Right.
skinny mini.
No, I have a love-hate relationship with food. You know, it's weird though. I know we're getting so off track, but it's so weird for me because like my, I guess, love language, especially when I do like a favor or something for Angela, she'll pay me and with food. And I love that. I love when she takes me out to lunch. I love eating when she feeds me. But if I was at home, no, like I don't like touching it. I don't like preparing it. I won't eat it it's just strange. Even my kids are like, we never see mom eating. But it's the weirdest thing. I do have a weird relationship with food. But that's part of, I think, all the process of healing and understanding certain reasons why we have illnesses or why we have these choices that sabotage our happiness. You know, it's just so
And I think if you're
layered.
healthy, I don't think it's a number on a scale. I think when you feel healthy, that's the weight you should be at. So I'm not pro any size or pro any weight, but I know for myself, when I was getting on up there, I didn't feel healthy. My body hurt.
Right. No, I totally agree. I mean, first of all, we could do a whole episode just on food, right? There's so much.
Yeah.
We have, emotions and traditions and so much wrapped up in food, and it should just be food that we eat to nurture our bodies. But no, I totally agree. I never judge anybody. My sister also had weight issues off and on, and it's for whatever reason. There's so many reasons behind that, and we just never judge anybody for that, right? Whether
Yeah.
protect you or just the way that you feel comfortable. And I too took a long time, but learned to just love myself and my body, whatever it looked like and whatever I was feeling at the time.
I don't think I'm there yet. I still struggle with that, but we're getting there. It's getting better.
Well, I can't say I love everything about my body. I'm 61. And the wrinkles and the sagging,
I know, just when you get to a point of like, I'm good, I'm healed. And then, like, oh wait, what's
that?
What's this? Yeah. Or my hair I've lost my hair. But anyways, we're getting off track.
So you got through, you started therapy, and tell us how that process was for you in your healing journey.
Yes, so it was part of the package. Having some support from family and friends was obviously important. And I do remember this was kind of strange, but I also think common for a lot of victims and survivors that as I started to tell more of my friends, especially male friends, a lot of them would react with violently, like, is he still alive? Or why hasn't anyone killed him yet? And I would get this little ding of pleasure in my brain every time I heard that. And I thought, well, that's not good. Why am I feeling joy at the thought of somebody being hurt? And I realized it wasn't that, it was the validation,
Mhm.
having somebody just automatically, reflexively side with me and believe me
And
and
want to
Ah,
protect you.
want
yeah.
to protect me and know that the other person was wrong.
I'm
And
so glad you brought this up. We've never touched on this subject, but thank you. I really appreciate you saying that and being open to saying it because it is true. There are times when we talk about our perpetrators or the, I'm thinking specifically of something a little sooner that happened with my son. Like I too, I'm like when people say I'm going to do some this and that to the other person, I'm like, yeah.
Mhm.
But then I'm like, oh no, yeah. So thank you for saying that.
And the validation, I think we suffer for so long in silence, not telling anyone that when someone believes us and someone has compassion over what's happened to us. I always say that if you find out somebody is diagnosed with cancer or has the flu or something, you take them a casserole. But when you disclose that you've been a victim of child sexual abuse, people just kind of back up and they don't know what to say and they don't know how to react. So that's part of this show is to help kind of break through the silent barrier around the issue so that people can be more compassionate to survivors because that's really no one can go back and undo what's happened,
Mhm.
but to heal, to have compassion around it, I think helps in the healing process.
And also too, I think to understand, at times when we're so sensitive or we react to a certain statement or thing or something going on, it's a little heightened and a little probably over the top is what I've always been accused of. But I think if we know that the person has gone through these traumas, we can kind of give them some grace. I know it's never an excuse to,
Yeah.
you know, we can't live in that victim mentality. However, we can have grace to those that, have these reactions or responses that are a little not not the normal.
So how has your experience of abuse changed you?
uh, well, well, do you want me to finish on the healing too? Because I do want to
Oh,
mention I do
mhm.
want to mention a book because it's still out there and it's still very helpful, especially if somebody doesn't have the means or isn't quite ready for therapy.
Yes,
You probably know it, The Courage to Heal,
yes.
by Ellen Bass and Laura Davis. And so this was in the 1980s that I was dealing with this. And, we didn't have social media. We didn't have support groups like that. We didn't have any of these virtual solidarity um, avenues. And so I bought this book, The Courage to Heal. And it was probably a lifesaver. It was really great at helping me get a huge way through my healing, coming to terms with what it was, accepting it, trusting myself and trying to move on from there. But then I worried that, I hadn't done it all. I didn't want to leave anything on the table. I wanted to make sure that I was really as healthy as I could be. So that's when I went to the therapist, and I had to get a couple before I found one I liked. And yeah, she just did what good therapists do. She just took me through it all and sort of reinforced things. And ironically, it was during this time when I was saying, I keep forming these unhealthy relationships. I think I need to just take a break from dating for a while. And it was during this time that I met my future husband. And the therapist was great for that because she said you can, it's if you're feeling it, don't, listen to your instincts, listen to your gut, and so don't throw that away if you feel like there's something there.
Was it through the therapy that you were able to reconnect with your mom?
Yes, so what happened was actually, so I fell in love with that man, and we were getting married, and that's when I decided it was time to reconnect because I couldn't imagine getting married without my mother there.
Oh, I'm sure she appreciated that.
Yeah. So we've come a long way. sort of reached an understanding. It will always be there, and it's not a perfect relationship, but I've been able to understand that she too was a victim, as they say, and to just understand some of why she makes some of the choices that she makes and has made. And while I don't love them, I accept them. I have no other choice. And I just try to focus on the parts of her that I love. And there are many of those.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're giving her a lot of grace, which is commendable.
Thank you. I think we have to, right? It's, if we want to heal, grace is an
Yeah.
important.
As long as your relationship is healthy and, you're not giving up part of yourself in the relationship, which I find that a lot of people who are around family members that they feel the need to have to be around, we tend to stuff our own feelings and emotions in order to appease or keep the peace. I feel like, there's always a level of that.
Oh, I'm about to say, I know that all too well, but it's another show.
Yeah. Do you think that it's partly a control thing? Because it worked for me and my mother because I was able to finally control the game, because in the first years when it came out, I had no control over her, and she was all over the place with her reactions, and it just hurt me and hurt me and hurt me. But once I let her back into my life, I was calling the shots. And I guess to her credit, she let me do that.
Well, sounds like boundaries is a
I
word
was
that's
just
coming to
gonna
me,
say,
that you
yeah,
have good
boundaries.
boundaries to know what's healthy and what's not healthy.
And
Right.
it's nice to know that your mom is respecting those boundaries. So I wouldn't call it a game. It's just a protective, kind of a good boundary as long as it's healthy. And yeah.
Right. But it does take constant work, and it takes two people, and there were slip ups along the way, but for the most part, I've been able to sort of lay out the parameters. And you're right, game is the wrong word for sure. But I was able to lay out the parameters for how we would relate to each other going forward.
I think that's beautiful.
All right, now I'll circle back to my question. How has the abuse changed you?
Yeah. So, also when in the early years, like I said, I did struggle with my weight and made a lot of unhealthy choices in terms of drinking and drugs and relationships. And I can give you some horror stories if you want, but there was that, but also some weird things. Like I definitely wasn't very confident as throughout my childhood and into my 20s. And I think by nature I'm an introvert, and so you never know how much of that is just me. But I do think that it messed with my confidence a bit, and it wasn't until I started working and realized, oh wow, I'm good at this, and they think I'm good at this, that I started to gain confidence. So there was that, and then the other thing that it took me years to figure out, but I believe it affected my memory. Because again, for 20 something years, I blocked it all out. My brain learned to push things away and lock them up somewhere. And I swear that that's why I often have a bad memory. And it's not with work things. I'm fine at work. I'm fine in general. But when it's sort of my personal life, I'll often forget things that someone else will have to remind me of. Remember when we did this or we did that? And I'm like,
I share that too.
Yeah.
I share that in common. I think a lot of survivors struggle or suffer with that. And we so compartmentalize our emotions. I think it has something to do with that. And then I've actually had brain scans where there's so much like gray matter up there that doesn't connect. I mean, my brain, if you saw a scan of my brain, it's like, holy cow, how could she form a sentence?
It's also a reflection of PTSD a little bit. Yeah.
right, that's fascinating. So basically the connections are not happening in the brain.
Well, and that's a protective mechanism to a certain extent.
Mhm.
They have to surface when you're ready and when you're going through that healing process. Because I feel like if we received all of our memories all at once, we wouldn't be able to handle it.
Mhm.
Because it is so layered. Trauma is layered. And I know you said here in your I sent you some questions and you said in quotes lesser abuse. Yeah, I want to touch on that because that is so important for our audience to understand that. And I even wrote about this on the last chapter of my own book. Pain is pain. You can't quantify it or calculate it or compare it. When something like that happens to a child, it does do damage to our brain and it does affect us lifelong, especially if we keep it locked up in a memory and we don't understand.
Well, I
You know,
think
the
anytime a child is touched or molested or raped, that innocence that was there, it disappears. It's no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
I spent my whole life. My abuse started at age 3, and it lasted till I was 17. So I spent my whole life trying to recapture that innocent little girl
Mhm.
and have compassion for her, because so much of my disclosure was met with, why didn't you tell? If it was so bad, why didn't you tell? And that just kind of rings in your ear, and that puts all the burden back on the child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
well, let's circle back to that one because I get pretty passionate on that point. Why did you tell? But first to the point of it doesn't have to be severe, and again, you have to always put these in air quotes, right?
Yes.
Severe or it's dramatic. I mean, and we are wired, I think, as people to think that if someone's worse off than us or they had a worse experience, then their pain matters more. But that's not the case. Like you guys just said, and I think I even have a character say this in the book, there's no such thing as mild trauma. When a when a line is crossed into trauma, some damage is going to occur. And that's exactly it. It doesn't matter that, and it took me forever to realize that, obviously. I mean, that's one reason I discounted it right away. I pushed it away. Oh my God, what's the big deal? I was touched and kissed. But when you're 6 years old and that's not the relationship you're supposed to have with an adult male, it messes you up. And yes, it does things to your brain. And so, I mean, honestly, if I have one message for today, that's it. I want anybody who, female or male, who's been a victim of something they consider not that big a deal or mild, it doesn't, it did matter. It mattered.
It was a big deal.
Yeah, you deserve to heal because it should not have happened. It was wrong and it affected you. And I have an adult friend who confided in me when we first became friends. Oh yeah, her uncle abused her for quite a while, and no, it's not a big deal. And maybe she truly is fine. Maybe she truly was able to put it aside and not let it get integrated into her psyche. But I don't 100% buy it, and I don't want anybody. I'm not trying to send everybody to therapy, but I don't want anyone thinking that what happened to them doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think if you stuff it down, it's going to manifest some way.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully our show, Voice Up, we want to give people just a place to voice up and to know that it's okay. It's okay to tell your story. It's okay to release that secret. You don't have to live with it.
And sometimes just releasing it, just talking
healing.
about it brings healing. And you may not need, like your adult friend, she may not need the whole full-on therapy and all that stuff, but just talking about it for her might be just enough.
Right. Because I do think, there's so many things, of course, you guys know, that go into how somebody heals and how much they're affected. And maybe she just had a super stable family and a very strong sense of self and a very strong amount of confidence. And, maybe just all of these things made her better able to withstand it. But
I think for our future children, though, for us to say it's no big deal and continue to get kind of desensitized to the sexualization of our children, I don't think that's healthy either.
Right.
So
which goes back to what you said a minute ago, which is, people saying, was it such a big deal? Okay. I have a website and blog for my books, and I have blogged about this a bunch of times because it drives me crazy. These questions that people ask of sexual abuse and rape, and rape victims and incest victims. But if you think about it, they don't ask these questions of any other crime victims, right? Think about this. Why? Well, was it really that bad? If somebody gets mugged and they have $10 stolen versus thousands or something, no one says they only took $10. Was it really that bad? People don't say that because they understand that person feels violated and they feel unsafe and vulnerable going forward. They might have nightmares. We accept that with other crimes. And yet,
yeah, go ahead.
But why with sexual abuse do we like, oh, well, he didn't mean it, and so was it really that bad? It's just wrong.
And I'm going to bring up another topic, which we have to discuss later in the future, but it's these people that are now, it's a little political, but they're called MAPS. What's the acronym called? What's minor attractive persons? Like now they're making it to where it's just a sexual preference for an older man to
Sexual orientation.
yeah, for an older person to want to be with a minor and making that okay. And we've had guests on our show that weren't even molested or touched in any way, but were an older person showed pornography. And that created like a violation of trauma within the child because they weren't ready to see, understand, or the feelings that it happened in their body. So it's like you're totally right to be very passionate about it. I'm grateful that you brought that up, and we have to talk about that more because it is traumatic for a child to be approached by an adult that they're supposed to have the authority and we're supposed to respect, or the child is supposed to respect, and then feel like there's been a huge boundary crossed and not know what to say, do, feel.
I just think that goes back to the innocence. We've got to protect the innocence of our children at all cost.
We do,
Yeah.
and we have to believe people when they speak up. No more of this. Why are you speaking up? And also there's the question. Well, why are you speaking up now? Right? If you didn't speak up when it was happening, why are you speaking up now? What's your ulterior motive? Are you really telling the truth? Or are you just trying to get someone in trouble? And that is equally frustrating. We all know there are so many reasons why people don't speak up when it's happening, and deciding to speak up is a huge act of bravery. And then to have that thrown in your face of people not believing you, it's no wonder a lot of people never say anything.
Yeah, 100%.
So tell us about your books.
Sure. So this is the one that's semi-autobiographical. It's called Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. And the title, do you guys know the saying, horseshoes and
we talked about on the phone, and I'm like, I'm so bad at sayings.
I do not know the saying.
We didn't know.
Yeah, there's an old saying that says almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So if anyone doesn't play horseshoes, you get points for getting a ringer, but you also get a few points if you have a leaner, which is almost a ringer. So almost counts, you get points in horseshoes, the game of horseshoes, but also in hand grenades, if it almost hits you, chances are, it hit you, right? Which is not a pleasant image. But I chose that because really the message is that this lesser abuse matters. So even if it wasn't, because I used to think it's not like I was raped or anything. So almost rape, almost abuse, if it was less than you think counts, you know what? It does count.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I chose the title. And it's like I said, it's semi-autobiographical. There's a lot of me in it, but I also, it's a novel, so it needed to be dramatic. So I worked in more drama than I had. The character goes to a support group with other women, and I fell in love with all the other women. And you hear a lot of their different things, including the example you just said, where one girl wasn't even touched, but things happened that were equally abusive. And as the other characters say, you may not have been touched, but it was in sexual nature and it crossed a line and it was wrong. Therefore, it was sexual abuse. It takes, and then as a big confrontation at the end that is maybe the kind of confrontation we would all like to have, but most of us don't get to have. So that was fun to write.
Your characters.
And you have a new book coming out in the summer?
I have one that came out a few months ago.
Okay.
Yes, and it's called Beautiful and Terrible Things, and it is not about sexual abuse, but it does have a lot of social justice themes in it. So I like to tackle meaty subjects in my fiction.
Awesome. It's a good way to have a voice through your writing.
That's my hope. I always hope people take something away from it. And honestly, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades, I really, really wrote this to try to help women, to try to help other victims. And so I was pleased when it wasn't easy finding a publisher because it wasn't dramatic, right? Publishers like dramatic stories of like intense abuse and intense alcoholism or whatever. But once I got it out there, I really hope that it helps people. In fact, I wish I could give a copy to everyone who needs one. And I do have a friend who is a therapist, and she made my day one time, and she said, I gave a copy of your book to one of my patients because I thought it would really help her. So,
Oh,
Wow.
that's the biggest compliment ever.
We look forward to having those links in this podcast so our viewers can get a copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll put them down there.
So we always end our show with a voice of inspiration. So we would like for you to speak directly to our audience. And we've just been so blessed by your story and to have you on today and your amazing work and your novels and your books. And I know what you read to me in the beginning will forever stay with me. That was very powerful. So we're going to give you this opportunity to speak to our viewers today.
okay. I'm not ready. Let me think. I mean, first of all, though, I do want to thank you two for what you're doing. This is so needed, and I'm sure
Aw.
a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
saying that. We need some encouragement.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah, no, it matters. I know you're sitting there in a room and you can't see your audience, but I mean, they're apparently out there, and I'm sure they're being helped. So anyway, if so, my message to people would be to reiterate that whatever happened to you, it matters, and it doesn't. Even if you think it wasn't as bad, and it probably wasn't as bad. There's always somebody with a worse story, but that doesn't make your pain invalid. Your pain is real. It's valid. You deserve to heal. You deserve to be healthy. So good luck.
Well, we're so blessed to have had Sue Stevens with us today. So blessed for her story, so blessed for her courage to share. And Sue, we thank you.
I thought you were rapping, sorry.
We've been so blessed to have Sue Stevens with us today. And we just thank you for your courage to speak up and speak out. And we know that you have blessed someone today.
I know. I can't wait. I'm going to get your book because I'm interested in reading it.
Yeah. So thank you, Sue. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So we've had a great show today with Sue Stevens and her books and her story. And I think we all have a good takeaway that whatever abuse you suffered, we want to say it matters.
It
and you
matters.
matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully what you've heard validates you and validates that message.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll give you the courage to speak up, voice up. Don't hold it in any longer. It's not worth it. And if you think you're okay, great. But at some point it might manifest, and I know that's hard to hear, but it might manifest in something that you don't want it to. So just talk about it, and it'll help release you and release maybe potentially somebody in your family or someone in your sphere of influence.
So Katie and I love you, and we're so glad that you've tuned in, and we ask that you would share and comment. As always, we want to thank Mesmerize Media for making this podcast possible to come to you, to be aired, and we're so grateful to you for tuning in. And I'm Angela Williams.
And I'm Katie Sudano.
Thank you.
Thank you.